A few decades ago, we would need to visit our physician to check our vital signs. But with the development of technology, we can now monitor some of them without leaving home, thanks to the increasingly more reliable and user-friendly remote patient monitoring devices. You may actually know or use some of them. For example, patients with diabetes regularly monitor their glucose levels through a CGM, continuous glucose monitoring device, so they can be reminded of when to take insulin. Digital blood pressure monitors are also widely available and allow you to measure your blood pressure and oxygen levels and instantly share the data with your physician. Remote patient monitoring is a growing industry that can reduce healthcare costs and ensure personalized care to patients, increasing treatment efficacy. Currently, remote monitoring is mainly used to assess vital signs and manage cardiovascular diseases or diabetes. But what if it could be used to monitor other increasingly prevalent disorders, such as cancer? Hello, and welcome to another episode of Crosstalks. My name is Adriana Costa, and I will be your host. This podcast series by the UT Austin Portugal Program will walk you through the wonders of science-business collaboration. We will be exploring emerging topics in advanced computing, medical physics, nanotechnologies, space-earth interactions, and technology innovation and entrepreneurship as we delve into the program's industry-driven research projects. According to the American Cancer Society, 1 in 3 people will be diagnosed with cancer in their lifetime, so early detection and regular monitoring are crucial to increase treatment effectiveness and chances of survival. In today's episode, we will address the use of biosensors for the remote monitoring of patients with prostate cancer, which is one of the leading causes of cancer-related death in men. Biosensors are devices that measure the concentration of biochemicals, also called analytes, and produce a measurable signal that can be interpreted. In cancer, they can be used to diagnose and monitor disease progression and its response to the available treatments. To detect prostate cancer, professionals look for a cancer biomarker in the patient blood called prostate-specific antigen, or PSA for short. Although accepted, this method has been associated with false positive results, overdiagnosis, and subsequently overtreatment. Could the use of biosensors to remotely monitor cancer patients be a better alternative? And what if we go even further and manage to get these biosensors implanted in our bodies? Sounds like science fiction? The UT Austin Portugal Strategic Research Project SENTINEL is a good starting point to deepen our knowledge of biosensors and their importance in the area of precision and personalized medicine in the fight against cancer and other diseases. To this end, we invited Rui Sousa, the CEO of Stemmatters in Portugal, and James Tunnell, the Associate Professor at the University of Texas at Austin's Cockrell School of Engineering, both at the helm of this international project, bridging researchers from UT Austin with businesses and research partners in Portugal. So welcome and thank you, James and Rui, for being with me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
So let's start with the name of your project, which is very curious. The name Sentinel reminds us of a signal that needs immediate investigation. What does your project aim to achieve that can act as a sentinel in healthcare, most notably in cancer management?
Okay, well, thank you again for the invitation. Actually, Sentinel project proposes a new concept regarding patient monitoring that is actually based on the implantation of a biosensor that is composed of a compatible and injectable biomaterial that is encapsulating plasmonic nanoparticles. And actually what we are attempting to do by injecting, after the injection of this implantable biosensor, is actually to use the biosensor composition to produce spectra that is or can be used to the monitoring of specific biomarkers, or even better, several biomarkers that actually could be used for the monitoring of disease stage, and could be of clinical benefit for the monitoring of disease progression, but also that produces actionable information related with diagnosis, but also prognosis of a specific disease. In this case, we are focusing on prostate cancer.
Would you like to add anything, James?
I think you did a great job, and thanks again for having me here as well. I mean, I think the idea here is to bring together different expertise, and this project, sort of building a biosensor that's implantable, that can be read out and then analyzed and provide a result, requires quite a bit of diverse backgrounds. So from materials to the sensor itself, to the optics that is the technique we're using to read out the sensor, to machine learning to then provide a result. So the only thing I would add there is that the approach is really providing a really multidisciplinary solution to the problem.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting that you need to combine different areas to build your project. So what areas or fields of knowledge have been combined to give shape to Sentinel as a minimally invasive and biocompatible implantable biosensor?
So that's a good point. So when you look at technology and you think about technology development, the best way to push really the limits of technology is really trying to materialize a very advanced product application or product concept. And actually the product concept that was just explained combines and integrates several distinct technologies and domains of knowledge that without them would be impossible to realize the concept proposed. And in that regard, we are talking about material science, but material science very much related with the medical use of materials. And we need to take into account aspects such as safety, toxicity, that is really fundamental to assure that technologies that we are proposing are safe and could in the future translate into a patient setting. But we are talking about also about the integration of plasmonic nanoparticles that are of relevance in terms of safety profile. We don't want these particles to leach out and really elicit a response in the patient that is actually or can actually compromise his or her safety. So these are important aspects. But we are also, and this is where we are not actively contributing so much, we are talking about also about the acquisition of the signals that are provided by the biosensor after implantation, and really all the data processing and interpretation that has to be put in place. And this is an area in which James could certainly speak much better than myself.
Yeah, I think that was a great intro. I mean, from translating from the materials on the biosensor side, which are things that are happening on Rui's side and over in Portugal, our side of this project is reading out the sensor. As it's implanted, we're reading it out through the skin. So we have instrumentation and optics that's involved in that. And then once we have a signal, we need to make a decision about whether or not a particular biomarker or sentinel is present. And so we use machine learning, data analytics to sort of look at that signal and provide a result from that. So from my perspective, there's this sort of materials piece of it. There's the optics and instrumentation to read out the signal, and then there's the machine learning piece. So really interdisciplinary group of people that are together. And Rui and I are sort of two pieces of that. There's also a couple of other groups that aren't here today, but they're contributing significantly to these other areas that we don't have all the expertise in.
Just to add a little bit more, and so it's not only the several fields of knowledge that have to be combined in order to enable the realization of this concept, is also the competences that are involved in terms of development cycle. So there is certainly contributions that are made at in vitro stage of development of the technology. That's where we are starting from, in which you have certain competences that have to be integrated in terms of knowledge for doing the experimental planning that we proposed. But then there is a translation into in vivo model to really to the clinical input from the clinical partner, in order also that are responsible for by enabling the access to the disease relevant samples. So there is lots of inputs, that it's not only about the technology fields that are integrated, is also about the know-how that is required along the development cycle of the product concept, that and that will enable us to translate from the in vitro stage to the in vivo stage, but hopefully also to the clinical development stage later on in human patients.
So yeah, it is very interesting to see how many different fields combine, much like a puzzle. With such a diverse group of fields, what is the main challenge of working with all these different areas and all these different people and partners?
There are many technology challenges. I think, yes, I think most of the challenges that we are facing are very much related with pushing the limits of technology to a level that is a little bit unparalleled in the current well, in the current state of the art, okay, if we can call it like that. If you look to the technologies that are today in medical practice, they are very far away from the concept that we have proposed. So there are certainly many challenges that in some cases are very granular and detailed, that of course are a challenge for us on an everyday basis, okay. And of course another challenge is really the integration of knowledge, because we all have very different backgrounds from engineering and scientific dimension. That is more or less my perspective. So I will separate these on these two aspects.
So if you allow me, let's get a little bit back and talk about the fact you're studying prostate cancer. It is very curious, and I want to ask you, why do you decide to study prostate cancer, and what are the challenges of working with it?
Yeah, I think it's obviously a very common type of cancer. So making an impact in this area could be very significant. So just the numbers that are out there. And although there is a really well-known biomarker, PSA, as you mentioned earlier, it has its issues. So there is area for improvement there. But because there is a biomarker for prostate cancer, it does make a good sort of test case. So it kind of makes a good case that biomarkers exist, but there's improvement that can also be looked at. So those are kind of the reasons I think that this makes prostate cancer a good one to go after.
Yeah, and I think they make total sense. And of course, this cancer is deserving of our attention. You've mentioned the PSA-based screening, which I have mentioned before. Could this project Sentinel be an alternative to the issues that the current practice has, and in which way?
Yeah, that's a good point. We are not sure how much a technology such as one proposed by Sentinel could actually replace PSA-based screening. Okay, what we know for sure is that the screening of prostate cancer based exclusively on PSA is not actually is not desirable. Okay, so you tend normally to overdiagnose using PSA based screening, and that is not ideal, because in the past what has been reported is a dramatic consequence of surgical intervention in cases that are probably related and mostly related with benign hyperplasias of the prostate. So actually are people that receive a treatment that is not ideal for their disease stage, or actually it's completely unnecessary with dramatic consequences, because the surgical approach can lead to devastating, has many risks. Okay, and so there is a very high risk of generating an unnecessary morbidity in the patients that could be otherwise avoided by using a more conservative diagnostic approach. We are not sure what we are aiming to produce. So we believe that prostate cancer is one of the cases in which you have a biomarker that is necessarily not adequate to traduce the correct stage of disease progression. Okay, so there is an unmet medical need related with those patients. And what we are aiming to provide is a more granular and detailed perspective about the progression of disease that could be used to complement, in the first stage, the diagnosis or the monitoring of patients that, because of their medical condition, are perceived as having a high risk of cancer relapse. That would be probably the first intended use for a device like this, not necessarily to replace, but to complement and monitor on a daily basis those type of patients for which they're a high risk, okay, may be compensated from the potential benefit of a medical device such as the one proposed in the project.
I don't know if James wants to add anything.
I think Rui did a great job.
So
thank you, James.
Since we are studying a disease with high mortality rates such as cancer, studying these or having these types of projects represents hope, not only for the medical community, but also for the patients and the families. But we also know that we have to be realistic, and that health technologies to be put into the market, it can take many, many years. What should we expect to get from your project when it ends in 2023? And when do you think that medical professionals, and most of all cancer patients, will start actually benefiting from the research you have been undertaking?
Well, I mean, I like what you said about these are complex problems and very challenging. And so I think, what comes with that is it does take a lot of time. There's technology challenges that start off, which we've talked a little bit about. But there's also the regulatory and safety and biocompatibility issues that have to go into sort of making all of this work. This particular project will end with animal testing. So we call that preclinical. We'll put the implants into animals and test the functionality in a preclinical setting with some human sort of blood samples. But the next stage that would come after this would have to be eventually in the clinic. And so it's hard to put a number on the timing, but these are things that take many years, 5-10 years down the road. I think maybe some of the most immediate outcomes are the advancement that we make and the technology and the research. And while this very specific Sentinel type device may be a long time out, some of the things that we develop and discover along the way contribute to the whole field, and it pushes the whole field forward, which does contribute even immediately to some of the devices that are sort of coming on the market. So we publish papers and describe what we've learned. Some of those techniques can go immediately into sort of improving upon current devices that are out there, current approaches that are out there. So it's kind of a two-pronged, I guess, advancement. There's this specific project and this specific Sentinel device, which might take a while, but there's also the whole field that's being pushed together at the same time.
Yeah, and what James pointed out, I think it's really important. While the Sentinel project really depends on the integration of these different areas of technology, And so there is certainly, for the integration of those technologies into a single product, there is the regulatory pathway and the development and the product development program that needs to put in place, for which it's not really easy to define a very specific timeline at the current stage of development. And that is one dimension of the potential foreground results or the outcomes of this project. So the integration of the old technologies into the materialization of the concept, that to reach the clinical stage will take a while because of the barriers, not only from a technology, but also from the regulatory perspective. But then there is the building blocks of this that are used to build this concept. And when you separate the concept into the building blocks, we have also results that, as James mentioned, could be integrated in other products that could reach the market much sooner and could generate benefit. And we are talking from our side is all about raw materials and about biomaterials that could be implantable or could be used as a chassis for formulation of medical devices or other therapeutic products. But certainly there are many other aspects like the algorithms that James is dealing with that could be probably integrated in other pieces of software that could reach the market much sooner than the concept that we are envisioning.
Yes, I think with all projects, more than the destination or the end goal of the project is the research and the knowledge that we gain along the way that can be implemented in other things and move research forward. So I totally understand how impactful not only it can be for example, prostate cancer, but also other fields of knowledge. Now we can move on for something that people can think or automatically think when we're dealing with biosensors, which have been used for many years. I'm thinking, for example, of the glucometer, a biosensor that revolutionized monitoring the blood glucose levels and positively impacted the quality of life of millions of diabetic people, for example. Underpinning our project is the concept of an implantable device. Being an implantable device, does it add complexity to the process leading to its complete implementation, as we were talking? And also not only about the regulatory level, which we also talked about, but also privacy and data security challenges. I'm sure that most people, when they think about having something implanted in their bodies, they think, will my data be secured? Am I safe? Can I be hacked, for example?
Yeah, I think those are good questions, and I probably have a different view of it than Rui does, because I think there's some technological challenges. From our side, I could give you one sort of simple one that, oftentimes we make measurements in a lab, and we have a sample that's in a little vial or in a petri dish, and we have direct access to it. So that measurement is much more simple than if we were to take that sample and put it inside somebody's body. There's a lot of barriers to reading that signal, the interactions of that sensor with the body. So that right there is a big technological hurdle. And we're spending a lot of time trying to understand how to read out these sensors when they are implanted. So there's definitely that aspect of it. The other thing that you mentioned was about the privacy. And there probably is a view that this sensor is going to hold information about the patient and that anybody could read that out and be able to use it. And in this particular case anyway, that would probably be a challenge. So really what we do is we read the sensor and that signal, which has sort of like an encoding of the information that we want, in our case would be sent to a cloud. And then that would then analyze the signal and provide a result from it. So there's no local information being stored on the patient. So I think there's a lot of there's a safety issue that is sort of alleviated by sort of sending it to a cloud. And of course, clouds get hacked, and everybody's probably concerned about that. But there are solutions, data storage solutions, and cloud solutions that can deal with that aspect that exist on the market already. So that's sort of less of an unknown in our case. I'm sure Rui has some other examples of technical challenges that he could contribute as well.
Oh, yeah, yes, certainly. But I would also point out to regulatory challenges. For example, if you look to medical device regulation and you try to classify the product that we are developing, we are in the borderline of the classification of the product, because we are talking about on what concerns the biosensor alone, and I'm not considering the software part, but on what concerns the device alone, we are talking about an implantable device that would be used under the skin for more than 30 days, but would be used with a diagnostic purpose. So we are not only at the intersection of several classifications, but more we are in the overlapping of different product classifications that certainly would create some challenges in terms of getting an approval from a notified body, because it would be something completely novel.
I'm sure this clarifies and tranquilizes people that even when this project moves forward, their data will be secured and there's no worries about it. So this project is a collaboration between entities of two countries, the USA and Portugal. Did you had any experience of working with each country before? Was this a new challenge for you?
I think this was a new project for me. I had visited Portugal before as part of this program, but Rui and I had not met. So for us, this was a brand new collaboration that was brought on by the call for this particular project. So I think it was really the program that put out the request for applications that brought us together.
Yeah, I think we were introduced by Lorena from INL, another partner of the project, and she is the person responsible. She's leading the team together with Sarah, that is developing the nanoparticles used inside the hydrogel that together form the implantable biosensor, and Lorena was the person responsible for introducing each other, and together we were able to assemble the Sentinel grant application, and we were very happy when we succeeded in getting it.
That's great. And I hope you still be happy when the project ends and has a great result. We know that working with two countries separated is a challenge. And I want to ask if the pandemic brought any additional challenges to the project or its execution.
Well, we have not met in person yet. So we've been totally virtual the entire time. So there's that piece of it. But I think we probably suffered the same kinds of challenges that others have in this time. But I think we adapted really well and have had a really good line of communication between the two. And I look forward to this July getting to actually visit the partners in Portugal for the first time in person. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yes, yeah, it's completely. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic situation, we did not have really the chance to meet. You know, when we submitted the application, we thought and we planned several physical events for us to meet and discuss the progress of the project, but actually all the events were not implemented, and we replaced that by bi-monthly online meetings. So each 15 days we meet and we discuss the progress of the project. And we've been able to cope with the challenge of cooperating with such a big distance between ourselves. But I think we have been able to overcome really that challenge quite well, in fact. And as James mentioned, we will have our first meeting in the next month of July, and we are very happy with it.
Well, I hope it all goes well, and I hope that James enjoys its stay in Portugal and enjoys the country. So I have a final question before wrapping up. Do you think that international cooperation in research can somehow help accelerate the transposition of personalized and precision medicine into clinical practice?
Yeah, I'll start. Um, I think that innovation and good ideas and progress comes from diversity of thought. So, I think bringing together diverse groups from all aspects is good. So, I think that is key. I think some of the specific perspectives we bring have to do with our technologies, and bringing together those into one. But I think there's also some other really interesting pieces. For example, from the regulatory perspective, the U.S. Version of this is much different than Europe, and where something like this might get tested and what regulations would impact its design and how it actually gets implemented are really important. And so having both perspectives of looking at that at the same time during the design phase, I think is a really valuable process to have.
Cooperation and international cooperation even more are really fundamental to push forward the development of technology in the medical area. And so it's for us being in Portugal and being a small company, for us is tremendously important to cooperation. That's why we cooperate with so many entities, not only in Portugal but also outside Portugal. And actually, the cooperation that we have through this program and together with James at Austin, it for us is really important, because this is a demonstration of something that is risky from a technology perspective, but would not be possible to materialize in any way if it wasn't by the cooperation. And the cooperation is even more important when it involves so many different fields and such an ambitious goal. So this is a way to address the risk of development. And I think in our perspective, as a small company working in biomedical sciences or in life sciences, what we need more is translation. And you only achieve clinical translation through cooperation, because the challenges, the barriers are so high that is impossible to do it alone. There is no victory or there is no pleasure in attempting to do these things alone. We have to cooperate, and we have to really to push forward, and you can only overcome that by working together.
Yeah, thank you for your words. I think I completely agree with that. Cooperation is everything in this field, and I would say many other fields. Do you have anything you would like to add to this podcast?
Thank you for having us. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, yes, really thankful for the opportunity really to share a little bit of the Sentinel project. And I think you are doing a brilliant job at the program, and thank you for all this involvement and really visibility that gives another dimension and flavor to what we are attempting to do.
Oh, I thank you, Rui and James, for being here and spending a little bit of your time to explain your project to our listeners. It was very nice to chat with you today and to learn more about the wonders of your project. And we can't wait to hear more updates about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for listening to this episode of Crosstalks. If you have enjoyed it, and even if you did not, we would love to hear from you. So make sure to subscribe and leave a review. For additional content, follow us at UT Portugal on Twitter or visit utaustinportugal.org. The Sentinel Project Consortium brings together scientists and business people from 4 institutions: Stemmatters, the International Iberian Nanotechnology Laboratory, the Clinic Academic Center Braga Association, and the University of Texas at Austin. Sentinel is co-financed by the European Regional Development Fund through Compete 2020 and the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology, bearing the seal of UT Austin Portugal. The total eligible investment is around 2.1 million euros, with public funding amounting to 2 million euros. UT Austin Portugal is a partnership program in science and technology between the Portuguese Foundation for Science and Technology and the University of Texas at Austin, supported by the Ministry of Science, Technology and Higher Education in close collaboration with the Council of Rectors of Portuguese Universities.